If you were looking for the best IEM available under $80 back in 2022, without question the Dunu Titan S would have been on your shortlist. But fast forward 2 years to 2024 and you've got other very credible alternative options on the market, prompting Dunu to finally release a sequel to that legendary original, aptly named the Titan S2. Over the course of this review, we're going to see if it lives up to the hype and lives up to Dunu's unquestionable reputation for a high quality product, but also compare it to some of my favourites under $80, including the SIMGOT EA500 LM, the KEFINE Delci and the EPZ X TIPSY STAR ONE. It retails for around $79. I've left a link in the description, and for that you're getting an extremely well built single dynamic driver IEM with a ton of excellent accessories, and they feature a relaxed U-shaped sound signature that's non-fatiguing and will appeal to those who enjoy long listening sessions. With an impedance of 16 ohms and a sensitivity of 107 dB, these should be very straightforward to drive even with your smartphone. In the box you're getting an absolutely unbelievable selection of different ear tips. The default are these red and black tips that Dunu call atmospheric enhancement, and they do boost the bass a little more than the others. Their excellent candy tips give a little bit of enhancement to the trebles. I'm not a massive fan of the balanced ones. You can guess what they do to the sound. And I don't usually love the S&S tips either, but they're definitely my pick when it comes to the Titan S2, meshing really well with the longer nozzle fit and augmenting the soundstage. The variety and the quality of the tips, as well as the number of different sizes that you're getting, means that the S2 is ideal for a beginner or a first-time IEM buyer who perhaps doesn't have a huge collection of ear tips already. And it puts the likes of SIMGOT who fail on all three of those counts to shame. The cable is a 4-strand OCC copper and silver plated lit wire, and it just feels really high quality in terms of malleability and durability, as well as benefiting from their Q-Lock mini plug system, meaning you've got two interchangeable outputs, both 3.5mm SE and 4.4mm balanced. As a result, you only have to carry one excellent quality cable around as opposed to two, saving you a little bit of space in your case. The case, by the way, is the same one that comes with the Falcon Ultra. It's excellent quality and there's plenty of room in it for all your accessories. Back to the cable, it terminates to a 0.78mm plug at the other end, and everything fits together nice and tight. If you cast your minds back to the design of the original Titan S, you'll remember that it had a cyberpunk style feel to it, and Dunu have kind of stayed true to that design brief with the S2. The highly polished chromium plated shell with red ruby style jewels at the centre definitely has a distinctive look, and this combined with the deep fitting nature due to that long nozzle mean that both the look and the design won't be for everyone. It's a real contrast to the smoky, low profile and chamfered edge design of the SIMGOT EA500 LM, which doesn't go anywhere near as deep into your ears. Likewise, the KEFINE Delci, much lower profile as well, much slimmer depth, meaning it didn't go as far into your ear canal and arguably could be more comfortable for prolonged use. But for someone who hates deep fitting IEMs, I actually found the Titan S2 to be quite comfortable, and I certainly didn't notice any ear fatigue after a prolonged period of time, which I really did expect to feel. Once you get over the initial shock of how they look, given that they are pretty different to most of the IEMs which are on the market, especially in that price category, I think they look absolutely fine, although I accept they will polarize opinion, and you also benefit from excellent isolation due to that longer fit. The original Titan S was famed for its cleaner, leaner sound that flew in the face of all the V-shaped bass cannons which were hitting the market at the time. One of the criticisms of the original was that it did lack a little bit in the bass department, and that's something that Dunu have tried to rectify here, adding plenty of oomph to the bass and giving it a warmer, thicker sound. The S2 features a dual magnetic, dual chamber single dynamic driver tuned with long listening sessions in mind, with the added weight in the lower mids diffusing the upper mid-range energy to bring a smooth, lush listening experience that perhaps only falls a little short on Technicalities. Looking at the graph, we can see quite clearly where the sound signature deviates a little bit from the Harman target. The mid-bass and lower mid-range really stands out here, and as I mentioned previously, this is one area where they've deviated away from the original Titan S. The emphasis here is definitely on the mid-bass. You've got decent punch, but it bleeds into the mid-range and lacks a little speed and tactility. Whilst male vocals on soul and R&B tracks can sound great with plenty of depth, genres that rely on faster transients like rock can struggle a little when it gets complex. This does improve when you use a more powerful source, but on a smartphone and with the wrong tip selection, it can expose it a little. That warmth in the lower mid-range, as you would expect, really benefits male vocals, and this really stands out in soul and R&B. The relaxed nature of the upper mid-range gives female vocals and instruments a softer definition. That said, on genres where you don't have a great deal of mid-bass, it can leave both female vocals and instruments for that matter sounding a little thin. The peak of 5K can bring a little bit of low treble sibilance, which can adjust the tonal balance depending on the track. And that continues into the trebles, which also track with the Harman target quite faithfully. The trebles are a bit of a paradox really. They can sound smooth the majority of the time, but that bump in the low treble can make some percussive elements more prominent than they should be, whereas others can sound a little bit blunted when perhaps they shouldn't. Thankfully, the treble is generally quite smooth, but if you know what you're listening for, you know that it doesn't quite sound as it should. Even despite this, the Titan S2 are a pleasant listen, balancing warmth, clarity and energy reasonably well, although lacking a little in the overall dynamism. They've got decent staging width, but not a great deal of depth, and the imaging and separation are a little bit behind some of the more technically competent performers in the sub $100 field. With many sets in this price category adding multiple tuning nozzles to try and give it a little bit more versatility, like the upcoming Delci AE and the SIMGOT EA500 LM, this is perhaps one area that Dunu could have added in order to cater to the different tastes and different preferences when it comes to tuning. The warmer, lusher sound and natural tonality is definitely going to get favour with a huge chunk of the market who like that longevity and non-fatiguing sort of sound, but by adding those extra nozzles in, I just feel they would have catered to a wider market. There's lots of competition in that sub $80 category, but the Titan S2 stands up pretty well against most of the top performers. The EA500 LM from SIMGOT, a product I reviewed here on the channel when it was released at the turn of the year, has been particularly popular. And you can see why with its low profile but attractive shells and multiple tuning options. As I mentioned previously though, it isn't necessarily the right option for beginners looking at their first IEM due to the poor range of accessories and low quality ear tips. Of the three nozzles that come with the LM, the closest comparison to the S2 is the gold red, but the LM still has an advantage when it comes to bass tactility and overall energy, albeit lacking the more natural timbre of the S2. The upper treble extension gives a bit more air to the sound, and the added sub bass adjusts the lower frequency balance, hitting a bit harder with a more visceral nature. There's a more metallic tinge to the trebles on the LM though, and that isn't fixable regardless of which tuning nozzle you go for. For critical listening, the LM's technical performance shines, but if you want something for longer listening sessions, the non-fatiguing nature of the S2 definitely gives it a marked advantage. The closest comparison is almost certainly the KEFINE Delci, again reviewed here on the channel and again one that I really enjoyed. The Delci is also a single tuning nozzle option, although the imminent Delci AE edition is going to change that. I've got a review of that coming very soon. The Delci is another warmer leaning set, but with more emphasis on the sub bass. The more balanced bass means that vocals don't quite stand out with their depth and thickness like they do on the S2, but the Delci has a deeper hitting bass overall with better texture. On the S2, the emphasis is very much on the mid bass, and it can be a little slow in comparison. It does have a much cleaner presentation of the upper mid-range though, so I see the S2 as being something of a halfway house between the LM and the Delci. Both of these sets have good horizontal staging, although I feel like imaging just about shades it on the Delci. The Star One from EPZ x Tipsy is probably the most underrated of the sub $70 options, hampered by its initial high release price, resin shell and really weak accessory offering. It's also a tough IEM to drive with its high sensitivity and low impedance that relies on a powerful source to get the best out of it. And I think these factors have prevented it from being as much of a success as EPZ would have hoped. Paired with the right source though, the Star One could sound really majestic with a more textured bass and a darker timbre, as well as a better transient response that makes it a more versatile set overall. It also has the lowest distortion of all the options, despite it being a brighter sounding set overall. The S2 falls short of the Star One in technical performance, but it's a far better value package overall in terms of what you're getting with accessories, the build quality, and also how it plays with different quality sources. I think that final comparison there sums up all of the reasons why you would want to go with the S2 over and above any of those other options. The value proposition is excellent. Those tips and the carry case I mentioned previously probably take the value of the accessories up to around $30, meaning you're only paying around $50 for the IEM itself. The build quality is superb, the cable is excellent as well, and its warm, bassy, U-shaped sound will definitely appeal to many, especially those who like a non-fatiguing, long listening session. That said, it does come up a little way short of some of the more technically adept sets in this price category, so if you're looking at something for critical listening, the S2 probably isn't the one. As I mentioned previously, it would have been nice to have seen some added tuning nozzles included to give the S2 a little more versatility. Do you own the S2? What do you think of it? And what did you think of the review? Do leave your comments in the comments section below. Give the video a like if you found it interesting, useful, both or neither, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.